And Holly, is it true that Wayne will not be joining today?
Holly, you're muted.
Yes, that is true.
Okay.
So he has two separate conflicts, one this morning and one this afternoon.
Told somebody the other day that mute is the new 4-letter word of last year.
It is.
Yes. So, all righty. Okay, it's 9 o'clock. So Stan might be a few minutes late. So we will go ahead and get started since everybody's here on time. So it looks like we do have a quorum established. Does PPACG want to confirm that?
Correct. You look good to go. Stan is on the line as well. He just joined us. So we should
And just checking, can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Stan, we have established that we do have a quorum, so it is up to for agenda approval.
And just
Unless
a
you need
reminder to state your name when making motions so that we catch those in the recording and for the minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Sharon, thanks for kind of getting the meeting started. And so we do have a call to order and have established a quorum. And we do have something to do before we go to the agenda approval, and that's a moment of silence for Mayor Val Carr. And with everybody's permission, what I would like to do with this is we'll have the moment of silence at the end, but I'd like to offer at this point, if anybody would like to say anything with about Mr. Carr, that would be outstanding. And my understanding from Andy Gunning is we do have a city councilman representative from Woodland Park, Councilman Robert Zulaga, and I apologize if I mispronounced your name, sir, but you can have the floor if you'd like to say a few words, and then we'll ask others to say a few words about Mr. Carr.
Thank you, Stan. Robert Zuluaga it is. Val was such a inspiration and a blessing for us here in Woodland Park. You know, before I became a councilman, which is just on a year now, he had worked with the existing council to make a resolution to promote a reliever route for Woodland Park. And up until that point, it had been just put on the back burner. And then just before Commissioner Norm Steen passed the torch, Commissioner Steen got together with Val Carr and myself and said, well, what's it going to take to make this happen? And he was just so engaged at so many levels in the community. He had a great voice. I remember at Christmas time, he had this big black top hat on. He was a master of ceremonies for the Christmas tree lighting in the park. You share with us any special events? Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine. And if anybody else, if you don't have your microphone muted, if you might do that, please, so that the councilman can continue to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So he passed out sheets of music to everyone in the audience. We were in the park. It was hot chocolate, and it was just to see him there with Santa, lifting his voice in song and just gathering the community, all stretched by the COVID restrictions. And it was just such a fun event. And sadly, just after that, he and his wife both contracted COVID, and he battled for 5 or 6 weeks in hospital. And so he's got big shoes to fill here in Woodland Park. And he also met with Andy Gunning, myself, John. I'm sorry, I don't remember John's other name, Andy. But we met to explore what's the next step it's going to take for a reliever route for our region and Woodland Park. So now those shoes need to be filled. I look forward to what participation I can have with you all, and we'll just see here what the future unfolds. So he is a great man, He's gone to be with Jesus, and I just wish him well.
Thank you, Councilman. And I'll have some comments, but I'll reserve those. Are there others that would like to say a few words about Val Carr, a dedicated public servant?
Mr. Chair, Andy, I had a chance to work with Mayor Carr a little bit over the past year. And as the council member just mentioned, he was a wonderful person. I found him to be very humble and just an excellent sense of humor, and sorely missed. John Leosados and I had a chance to interact with him quite a bit about the reliever route project and a handful of others, and just a wonderful spirit. So sorely missed.
Thank you, Andy. Are there any others?
Good morning. This is John Graham, Manitou Springs. I didn't know Mr. Carr closely. We hadn't had a chance to serve together too much, but the times that I had contacted with him, I thought him to be very pragmatic, very common sense oriented kind of individual, very approachable. I thought he was really, in many respects, the essence of a public servant, a really approachable guy, perfect for a small town. So I'm sure that he'll be missed, and I feel I'm at a loss for not having the chance to know him better. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Are there others? And I'll go ahead and then I'll speak. And if anybody wishes to chime in after I speak, that will be fine as well. I got to meet Mayor Carr, and I tell you, he was my feeling for him is he was just a real gentleman. He cared deeply about local government. He cared deeply about people. And he loved Teller County. He loved Woodland Park. I think, I wish I had had an opportunity to actually have heard him sing and lead these Christmas carols. But I tell you, everybody I speak to that knew him well remembers that very specifically about him. And I think he was a great leader for the community up there. I actually had an opportunity last night to spend some time in Teller County and to talk to some folks there. And I mentioned to them that we were going to do this moment of silence for Val Carr at the PPACG meeting this morning. And they were very grateful to know that we were going to recognize them. They all knew him. I think he was known by most people in Teller County. Had been a longtime figure there, and they were very appreciative that we were going to do this to honor Val Carr. So what a loss, and I'm just saddened by his passing. But I appreciate the councilman's comments. I'm sure he's in a better place today, and it's tragic for us. But I think that he's going to be doing well. I hope that his family is doing well. And Councilman, maybe you may have some words about that. I don't know if you've had a chance to speak with his family, but I hope that they're doing well. And if there's anything that we can do for the family, I'm sure we would be interested in helping out. Are there?
Well,
go ahead, Councilman.
Well, thank you. His wife Sherry, she's quite a private person, and so she is processing through this in her own way. The community is planning a celebration of life sometime in the spring, and they're looking at what type of memorial to create for him in town. And just on his, I want to share something personal about his wife and his relationship, and something that he introduced me to while he was in hospital. Maybe you were all read the book Winnie the Pooh when you were young. I had a deprived childhood. I did not read it until Sherry mentioned to me that Val really enjoyed the humor in Winnie the Pooh. So I promptly went and bought a copy, and while he was in hospital, I read it and found it to be just such a delight. I mean, that the sort of innocence of that particular story has marked their relationship. So if you haven't had a chance to read Winnie the Pooh, you'll get a sense of another sense of Val. So anyway, I'll stop there. Thank you, Stan.
Thank you. Any last calls for comments for Val Carr, Mayor Val Carr? Okay, hearing none. At this point, I would like to do a 20-second moment of silence to honor the passing of Val Carr. And if you all could remain silent, I'd appreciate it. And we'll do that at this point. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your respecting Val Carr and everything that he did. And if I could maybe just, we do have an opportunity for introductions. And Councilman, are you going to be our representative from Woodland Park at this point?
Well, I certainly volunteer to do so. As you know, we have a vacancy now. I think that the Mayor Pro Tem is scheduled as the alternate, but I would certainly put my my hat in because of my existing relationship or introduction with Andy and John and the work that Val has started. I'd certainly like to join you if that's however the political process works on that.
Well, that's a process that will carry forth within City Council for Woodland Park, and thank you for that. We look forward to having that person identified and participating in our meetings. And in the meantime, you are welcome to stay with us at this meeting and see a little bit about what we do at PPACG.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. All right, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is number 2, agenda approval. Are there any comments or questions with the agenda? And hearing none, let's go ahead.
Approval of the agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Gabler.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, our agenda is approved for today. Let's go on to public comments. And it's my understanding, Andy, that we have a special guest speaker today that wishes to speak a little bit about some legislation that they're introducing at the state level. And I believe that is Representative Terry Carver. Is she on the line at this point?
I do not see her on the line yet. I know she has meetings this morning, so maybe something where we work her in during the other public comment items that we have. So we just may need to be nimble there. I did get a request from Brian Vitulli with MMT. He would also like to say a few words under public comment, maybe before we get started with the presentations.
Okay, very good. So Andy had mentioned to me, and this is for the board's understanding, that Terry Carver had asked for an opportunity to speak for just a couple of minutes about some legislation that she's going to be proposing or introducing that would help communities like ours deal with woodland fire risk. So I think that's very appropriate for a meeting such as this to hear a little bit about what her plans are. So I'm hopeful that she'll join us maybe a little bit later in this meeting, and we'll get that opportunity. At this point then, based on Andy's recommendation, shall we go ahead and have Brian speak for a few minutes? Brian, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Good morning, everyone. Brian Vitulli with the City of Colorado Springs Mountain Metropolitan Transit. And I just wanted to briefly speak with you about our spring service change process and let you know that we're very close to making a final recommendation as we move toward implementation later in April. So our spring 2021 service changes during the weeks of February 15th and the 22nd. We recorded a video presentation. So we're still doing public meetings virtually. And during the week of February 15th, we released that and also provided a link to a survey for our customers to review the material and then fill out a survey and add any additional comments regarding the service change proposal. We kept the public comment period open through February 25th. One thing we've noticed, this is the second virtual public process we've had for our service changes, the first one being last fall, and this one. This has really created a much more response than we normally get at our in-person public meetings. So it's something to think about. In the future as we do this, it is enlightening to read the comments, and the comments are well thought out and well presented, and we've received a lot of them. So that was one benefit of this. But briefly, our proposal was to add a new route to the Peak Innovation Park and the Colorado Springs Airport. The Peak Innovation Park is where Amazon is building their second large package distribution center. They're, I believe, starting their third one that's supposed to be done later this year. So this is an incredible opportunity. I mean, there could be 3,000 to 5,000 new positions just within the Amazon facilities. So we're starting this kind of bare bones. We're kind of timing the services to meet the Amazon shift changes. So we're kind of proceeding lightly. We're going to be starting this route from our existing Academy Boulevard, Asterzon Superstop area. It's a transfer location where 4 other transit routes converge. So we'll be operating it from there to the Peak Innovation Park and the Amazon facilities, and then to the Colorado Springs Airport. So we're thankful to our city council with contributing some city general fund dollars, and also to our partners with the Colorado Springs Airport who are helping to fund this. Amazon's also been a great partner in helping to pay for and construct 2 shelter stops by their facilities. So this service is looking to start probably mid-June. It's kind of a tentative date right now because it's kind of based on their construction schedule. But as I mentioned, it's time to meet their shift changes, and once the final Amazon facility is constructed later this year, it's likely that we'll be again going to our city council asking for additional funds to provide a more all-day service to the Colorado Springs Airport and to Peak Innovation Park. But this is a great start for this year, and we're thankful for all the support we've had. The other 3 proposals were presented to us by the city of Manitou Springs. As you may know, Manitou Springs funds the seasonal shuttle services that operate in and around Manitou Springs. The first proposal is to extend Route 36, which is a service that operates back and forth on Manitou Avenue, providing really frequent service from the airports, from hotels, restaurants. Residents use it to get downtown and around. So this service proposal was to extend the route further west from the Ruxton roundabout to the Serpentine Drive roundabout. So extending it west opens up this whole western part of town to visitors, residents, and it's no cost, and it doesn't do anything to frequency. So it's kind of a win-win for all, and that is something we fully support. So that would likely be implemented on Sunday, April 25th. The other 2 items are regarding Route 33. Route 33 operates from Old Man's Trail at the Hiawatha Gardens parking lot and travels on Manitou Avenue and up Ruxton Avenue to where the Pikes Peak Cog Railway will be soon opening this May. Also provides service to the Bar Trail, Trailhead, and to the Incline. Manitou Springs is proposing to eliminate the second bus that operates during the summer, during peak times, giving Route 33 a 10-minute frequency from 6 a.m. until 4 p.m. So they're proposing to eliminate that. And they're also proposing to eliminate the last 2 hours of service that operates in the off season. So from January 1st until late April and from late September through December, the city of Colorado Springs pays for Route 33 from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Manitou Springs was paying for 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. So that is something we support. The ridership numbers show that there is quite a drop off in ridership those last 2 hours of service in the off season. So we support that. I would like to say as we're finalizing our final recommendation here, it's likely that the city of Colorado Springs will be funding the elimination of that second bus that operates during the peak season. So we feel that that's an important service to keep in there. It keeps that Route 33 operating every 10 minutes when it's desperately needed. The passenger loads on Route 33 in the summer are pretty large. So by not eliminating that second bus, we can still provide a good service and help our customers. So we're offering to do that for the 2021 season. So as I mentioned, we're very close to finalizing our final recommendation here, and we'll be working toward implementing these services. As I mentioned, the Amazon service will start probably mid-June. The Route 36 extension will start on April 25th. And the reducing the off-season Route 33, that doesn't go into effect until September 26th at the end of the summer season.
Great.
So I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any, but again, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Brian Vituli? They sound like very reasonable approaches. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Graham.
Sorry, thank you. Yes, John Graham, Manitou Springs. I'd just like to express on behalf of the city our appreciation for the cooperation that has been extended to us by Mountain Metro. I think they really, among other things, understand the importance of that extra bus during the peak loads in the summertime. Just as a casual observer, I see that bus saturated throughout the summer. So we very much appreciate the relief that you're helping provide. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Any other comments for Brian? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Brian, for the update. They sound like very interesting, service changes. So we look forward to seeing how those will work this year.
Great. Thank you very
so
much.
thanks so much. And I think at this point, Andy, shall we go to 3A, the CDOT greenhouse gas roadmap?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, and I'm going to pass this over to Rebecca White with CDOT. I think she's going to introduce it and then introduce the main presenter for this morning. So Rebecca, yeah, take it away.
Hey, can you all hear me okay? Thumbs up, great, thank you.
Loud and clear.
All right, thank you, Chair Vanderwerf. Thanks PPACG board for the time this morning. I think last time I was able to speak with this group, it was about the 10-year plan, and I've really appreciated the partnership since that in advancing some really important projects in the PPACG area. But speaking of planning, I have a different topic to bring before you today, and that is a proposed regulation that's coming through the Air Quality Control Commission that has to deal with greenhouse gas emissions and the transportation sector. And CDOT is taking a very active role in this because it impacts our world, and we want to kind of be in the driver's seat to use the transportation fund to help develop this. So we've been doing a pretty concerted outreach effort over the last few months. I'd like to thank again Commissioner Williams for the time she's given already to this effort, as well as to John and Andy. We really want a lot of input and flagging of concerns and what ifs at this early stage so that we can work with CDPHE on this regulation and do that in the best way possible. So today we have kind of a high level summary for you all. I know for some this may be a repeat as we've had, I think, 2 outreach sessions more broadly in the CDOT Region 2 area already. Apologize for the fire alarm there. Ooh. I think everything's okay. Sorry about that.
Best laid plans, Rebecca. Let's see. I think we've had a fire alarm, and I think if I saw not too long ago, I think we had a cat's tail go across the screen. So you know, we may see more as the meeting goes on. Go ahead and proceed.
Thank you. Thanks. Sorry about that. At any rate, well, we have a pretty high level slide deck, but that reflects exactly where we are in this process. We are at the early stages still. However, this is moving quickly. The regulation timeline that Teresa will show you has a draft in May and a final in August. So we're going to pivot pretty quickly here later in March and into April into getting into some specifics. And so I hope we're able to come to the board another time before we get closer to this. I sure appreciate the time today. So we'll make the best use of it, fill you in on where we are, and we are absolutely here to stay on and answer questions. So if it's okay, Chair, I'll turn this over to Teresa Takushi. She is on the CDOT team. She's our greenhouse gas specialist, and she'll run you through a few slides, and then we can take questions.
Thank you, Rebecca. Teresa, you're up.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you, board members, for the time. We want to bring up the slide deck. I can walk through again. I apologize for those of you who have already seen some of this. All right, thank you so much. So today I'm just going to talk about incorporating greenhouse gas emissions reductions into transportation planning. These first few slides I'm going to go through kind of quickly because they kind of just lay the groundwork from the roadmap. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So I'll talk about the Colorado's climate legislation and policy framework just really quickly, and then get into the proposed rules and policy for the transportation sector, and then talk about our stakeholder outreach and input. Next slide, please. All right, so as I said, just for the sake of time, I'll go through these quickly, but essentially we have House Bill 1261 and the greenhouse gas roadmap that are essentially laying our greenhouse gas reductions targets for the state. So you can see on that second bullet under House Bill 1261, where the targets lay. We're at a 26% reduction by 2025, 50% by 2030, and 90% reduction by 2050 from 2005 levels. The greenhouse gas roadmap itself really lays out the near and long-term actions in order to achieve those targets. So again, it's statewide and across all sectors. And that was recently finalized. It can be found on the Colorado Energy Office's website. Next slide, please. Again, I'll breeze through this, but again, this is just to show that back in 2005, which is that baseline year, electric power was the largest sector of greenhouse gas emissions in the state of Colorado, with transportation being the second largest. And in 2020, that's actually changed now. So transportation is the largest source of emissions. And again, this is just kind of laying the groundwork for our work that's coming. So next slide, please. So this is just a graphic representation. Again, this is taken from the roadmap, but it shows where we need to go in order to reach those targets that are established in House Bill 1261. So again, if you look at that red line and those circles, that's where we're headed. If you see the yellow line right in the middle, that's our 2019 action. That's actions that we've already taken that are kind of getting us close. We're about half of the way there, but we have more to do. So again, these slides are really just to provide background so you can see where we're headed from here. So the next slide.
Teresa, this is Commissioner Stan. Perhaps you will have it in one of the charts, but if I understand correctly, Drake is being converted from coal to natural gas. And if that's an accurate statement, that will be a substantive reduce in greenhouse gas emissions. And I'm kind of hoping maybe it's just the question is, are we going to get credit for that conversion or will that be included in some of these plans? Because you're talking about us kind of getting halfway to this first round of goals. But I think I saw it was 2025, and I just might need to be corrected on the date for the conversion for Drake, but it might be inside that window.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I'll talk a little bit about CDPHE and CDOT's role. And I think so CDPHE is looking at all of the reductions across all of the sectors. So they would be the ones that would be considering that type of reduction and how that gets us closer to the goal. So absolutely, they're looking at all of those elements.
Okay, thank you.
So here is a list of the near-term actions that are included in the Colorado Greenhouse Gas Roadmap. And so you can see there's many different opportunities for transportation. The first is the greenhouse gas pollution standards for transportation plans. And really that's the focus of our outreach. And that's the focus of CDOT's outreach. There's another component, again, I'll talk about this a little bit more in the next few slides, but the trip reduction or TDM requirements to encourage telecommuting for large employers. It's part of the transportation package, rulemaking package that's going before the commission, but it's not, it's being handled through a separate process. So CDOT's focus is really on this greenhouse gas pollution standards for transportation plans. The next slide, please. So again, just to talk a little bit about the different bodies. So again, I mentioned CDPHE. So the Department of Public Health and Environment has the Colorado Air Quality Control Commission, who's appointed by the governor and authorized by the Colorado General Assembly. The AQCC really develops air pollution control policy and regulates pollution sources throughout the state. So the AQCC is actually taking up a series of rulemakings across all sectors to address greenhouse gas emissions in order to implement the recommendations of the roadmap. And one of these is focused on the transportation sector. Now, the Colorado Department of Transportation and its governor-appointed Transportation Commission has statutory authority over the transportation planning process. And this process is guided by a series of policy directives that are issued by the Transportation Commission. The rule that I was talking about that really is the focus of our outreach, the greenhouse gas pollution standard, will actually include actions by both of these bodies. And the next slide really explains how. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the rulemaking itself is, as Rebecca mentioned, it's on a quick timeline. It's the draft request for hearing. The request for hearing will be in May. The final rulemaking hearing will be in August. And the Air Quality Control Commission is considering a bundle of transportation measures. So one of them will be the greenhouse gas pollution standard. This CDOT, the reason why CDOT is really taking the lead is in order to develop the reg and policy. And the policy is really going to help to develop implementation guidance through a policy directive that's specific to this greenhouse gas pollution standard. So this piece, again, will run in parallel with that process. So a draft policy directive in May and a final policy directive in August. So running along in parallel. And then the next slide really lays out our initial thinking. So as Rebecca said, we're really early in the process and we're definitely trying to reach out to as many stakeholders as possible in order to kind of hear back on our initial thinking. So again, it's to set a numeric greenhouse gas budget for transportation plans. And so we're looking at starting it at a statewide level and then looking at maybe a phased implementation with an initial focus on certain MPOs. We're really focused on the largest sources of greenhouse gas emissions. So we're looking along the Front Range. We're looking at areas that have the most greenhouse gas emissions and the most people. And really the focus of looking at the projects that fall into the transportation plans is projects that increase capacity. So again, we're looking at large sources of greenhouse gas emissions and opportunities to reduce emissions from those projects. And the CDOT guidance itself will really focus on the practicalities of how the policy translates into specific project-based requirements. And the idea is that we would include other measures in order to meet the budget. So we would look at the budget, a statewide budget, and then if we can't meet that, we would look at different opportunities in order to include in order to meet that budget. The next slide really shows this graphically. So you can see that the planning is step one. So again, that's where our statewide planning process and regional planning processes fall, is our planning step. But as I mentioned, there's opportunities to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from projects themselves, which fall into any of these other steps. So step two, which is environmental analysis or NEPA, project design and contracting is step three, Project construction is step 4, and then operation and maintenance of those projects in step 5. So again, this is our initial thinking, and we're just looking for feedback and making sure that this makes sense as we move forward. The next slide talks a little bit about our approach. So the questions that we're asking our stakeholders, and again, we have gotten a lot of great feedback. So we feel really good going into policy and rule development at this point, and we hope to have something to have people respond to very shortly. So we're looking forward to hearing questions, concerns, and challenges early in the process so that we can make sure that we're addressing those as we develop the rule and policy. And
Great. Thank you, Teresa. Are you finished?
oh, sorry, the last slide just kind of
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
gives my, we do have a regional meeting. These are the old regional meetings. I do want to just say that we have a Region 2 meeting scheduled for April 12th from 10:30 to 12. And if you're interested in attending that meeting, the next slide is my contact information. So feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to get you on the invite for that next Region 2 meeting. And that's all I had. So yes, I'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Teresa. So just some quick comments for me. I think I myself would like to be invited to that April 12th meeting. So if you might add my name to the list. And let me just open up the floor to see if anybody else would also have an interest in getting that invite. Are there any others that would want to be invited to that meeting? And Andy has just stated in the comments in the chat that you'll get the notice out to everyone. That's really great. Are there any other questions for Teresa? I have a few, but I'll reserve those. Any other questions? Okay, the first thing is I'm just kind of a foregone conclusion. We'd be interested in the charts. And second is the House Bill 1261 that was mentioned. I'm just lost the bubble on it. Is that a proposed legislation or passed legislation?
Thank you for the question. It was passed in 2019.
Passed in 2019. Okay. Andy, I'd be interested in, at least for myself, and there may be others, if we could maybe have a copy of that sent around. I'd be interested in reading the provisions of 1261.
Sure, happy to do that. Yes.
Okay. And then the remaining question I have is, it's a topic of conversation we've had fairly often. You might be well aware of it, Teresa. This concern about, ozone causing gases and other greenhouse gases that come from places not in our community, and whether or not that gets counted against us for meeting, ozone targets and other pollution targets. I don't know where CDPHE stands on that point of view, but it's my point of view. And I think there are others on this board that feel it's unfair to have that counted against us when they're coming from China, like we've had in several summers and other places. And then I think there's also been comments about some of the pollution from fires that are not in our community. So Teresa, do you have a sense of whether that would or would not be counted in calculating these numbers?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. Yeah, I can give you a preliminary sense. We are looking at data right now. We're basically looking at information that's from our travel model, our statewide travel model. So we are looking at data of vehicles and emissions that are occurring in the state based on vehicles in the state. So I hope that clarifies the point that we are really looking at our traffic counts, and then we're running that through our statewide travel model, and then taking that information and running it through a different air quality model, which is the MOVES model. So it is looking at Colorado specific information.
Thank you. I think that maybe answers it, at least from CDOT's perspective, but I'm not so sure I have clarity on CDPHE's point of view on that. So that might be something, Andy, that we'll want to take a look at.
CDPHE on deck, not to put Dina and her team on the spot, but I know they're going to present on the our ozone status next.
Okay, great. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Teresa or the team on this topic, CDOT greenhouse gas roadmap?
Commissioner?
Please.
So I think Teresa did mention that the CDPHE was handling the employers over 100 employees in a different process. We have an email that we'll be sending out shortly that we did receive from CDHPE about some meetings about that. So again, we'll send that out to you all. And to the extent you can help us get it out to all of the major employers in town, especially the military installations, that way we can make sure that they have the opportunity to participate if they so choose. So kind of separate, but kind of together. And that'll be a separate email that goes out later. Just want to make sure there's no confusion on that.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right, Andy, I think we'll move to 3B, our ozone update.
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca and Teresa. That was very helpful. And next up, just coincidentally, we scheduled this presentation. You've heard from Gordon Pierce before with CDPHE about our ozone status. And we scheduled that for a briefing this morning, and especially to get some direction around some of the forest fire issues that we had last summer and how that goes into our calculation. I know that CDPHE is looking for some feedback from the board on whether or not to seek an exclusion from those calculations. And before we dive into that, and Gordon and Dina, not to put you on the spot, I know Dina Wojtek is here as well from CDPHE. Anything that you wanted to address from just this previous conversation on the climate change greenhouse gas emissions roadmap before we get into ozone? And if not, that's fine.
I don't have anything, Dina. I think you'd be best on that.
So I did drop in the chat a quick response. There was a question about whether or not, credit was being given for the announced closure of Drake. And so there have been a number of announced closures throughout the state. And yes, those reductions are being factored into future projections in terms of how Colorado will fare against the reductions set in this House Bill 19-1261.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah, and with that, we can just move on to our ozone update. So with that, I'll hand it over to Gordon, and I think we have your slides ready to go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you for allowing me to present to the board here. I had been asked to present primarily on ozone, but also understanding there's a number of new board members. I was also asked to include some information as far as just current status of air monitoring in Colorado Springs and what's being observed. So I'll have that as part of the presentation as well. So if we move on to the next slide. Just as an introduction, just a list of the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. Ozone is the one that is of primary interest these days in Colorado in general. The North Front Range, Denver North Front Range area of Colorado is a non-attainment area for ozone. There's two standards that are in effect at the moment, essentially the older 75 part per billion standard that was established back in 2008. And then the 70 part per billion standard that was established in 2015. Due to some lawsuits that were filed, the older standard was never revoked by EPA, so we have to operate under both. There is also carbon monoxide monitoring in the area, and two standards for that, a 35 part per million 1 hour standard, and then an 8 hour 9 part per million standard. There's no nitrogen dioxide monitoring in the Colorado Springs area. Sulfur dioxide has a 1 hour standard of 75 parts per billion. There is a secondary 3 hour standard, but it's such a high level, it's not something we even consider worrying about. And then there's two particulate standards that we monitor for in Colorado Springs, PM10 and PM2.5. So PM10 is a 24-hour standard of 150 micrograms per cubic meter. For PM2.5, there's an annual primary standard of 12, and then a secondary standard, a 24-hour standard of 35 micrograms per cubic meter. So next slide, please. So here's just a map showing where the different sites are that we have in Colorado Springs. So starting at the north is the Air Force Academy site near the South Gate. That was started back in 1996 for ozone. Then our second ozone site is in Manitou Springs. That commenced in 2004. The Colorado College site is the next one going to southerly. That's for particulates, which started in 2008. And then the site just west of I-25 on Highway 24, which started in 1998 for carbon monoxide and then had sulfur dioxide added in 2013. A lot of these sites were established really based on expected wind patterns, especially for ozone. It tends to be an upslope convection heating type of situation in the summer. So that's why the sites are kind of up the main drainages out of Colorado Springs, the Fountain Creek and the Monument Creek drainages. Carbon monoxide and particulates, in contrast, tend to be a little more focused in the urban areas. So that's why they're a little closer towards the downtown area. Next slide. So now we'll move specifically into ozone. And I know that some of you have seen these slides previously, but some of you may not have. So the slide to the left shows ozone in comparison to the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. And what I'm putting on here is the 70 part per billion 2015 hour standard. And the ozone standard is based on the 3-year average of the fourth maximum 8-hour values. So essentially you look at what's the fourth maximum daily 8-hour value for 3 consecutive years and average those together to get the standard. The graph on the right-hand side, the smaller one on the right-hand side, shows what the fourth maximum values are on an annual basis. So as you can see, there's a lot of variation. We tend to get a cyclical nature due to meteorological patterns that occur in the area. And we see this same trend, kind of cyclical trend in the North Front Range up around Denver and northward. And then you can see also that this last year, 2020, there was a huge spike. A lot of that really is due to wildfire events that occurred. We had some pretty, as everybody knows, some pretty bad wildfires in Colorado. The 3 biggest wildfires in Colorado's at least recorded history happened in 2020. And the smoke can result in not only influences on the analyzers, but also tends to increase ozone as well, just with the reactions that go on within the smoke. So they are considered an event, and I'll talk about that a little more. The nice thing is, even with those events, in the left-hand slide, you can see there is a slight downward trend over the years, over the last couple of decades. With the cyclical pattern, you do need quite a few years to really see if there is a trend or not. Obviously, over that time period, population and traffic have increased significantly. And then you can see also that the level of the NAQS, the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, has decreased over time. The result of the wildfires, as you can see, though, is that for the 2018 through 2020 average, 3-year average, the numbers are now over the level of the NAQS. And so that is a concern. Next slide. So I wanted to look into these a little closer. So exceptional events are something that the EPA defines as some events that affects air quality in such a way that there exists a clear causal relationship between the event and the monitored exceedance or violations, and that it's not reasonably controllable or preventable. So with ozone, there tend to be 2 types of exceptional events that we look at. One is stratospheric ozone, where especially in the spring, when you get some high winds, they can essentially, as the winds ride up over the mountains, they catch the lower part of the stratosphere and pull some of the ozone from there down to ground level. So those events typically happen around the March, April timeframe. The other big one is wildfire smoke influence. And that's really what caused a huge problem in 2020 and somewhat back in 2018 as well. So you can see the days, there's 2018 on the left, 2019, we didn't have any events that for the Colorado Springs area. And then 2020, as you can see, highlighted in yellow, there's a lot of events. So for 2018 and for 2020, the values that are bolded in green is the fourth maximum value for the year. And then what would be in red is if we did take away all of those events, what the fourth maximum value would be, from that. So as you can see, if you take away all of those events, the fourth maximum values would drop significantly. And as I've highlighted in the red box there, just the huge wildfire smoke influence in 2020. And this was seen across the whole state as well, where especially in the late August timeframe, that just dominated the top values at all the sites across the state, and especially so in the Front Range area. So next slide, please. So if we look at what is the impact of exceptional events and what are plans going forward. So the 3-year averages, as you can see there, from 2018, 19, and 20, and then what they currently are in red. So 72 parts per billion at the Air Force Academy and 71 parts per billion at Manitou Springs, which is over the 70 part per billion standard. If we took away, in the right-hand column there that's in blue, if we took away the high values at the end in the late August timeframe, we would get quite a drop there in what the 3-year averages would be, and it would actually take us down below the level of the standard. So EPA allows for flagging of events that are not reasonably controllable or preventable. For any event that we do see during the year, whatever the case, we will flag them in EPA's air quality system there, the main database, national database. We'll flag them, whatever the case, is informational only, just so we have a record of days that we feel have been influenced in some form or another by an exceptional event. If we are going to if we want to do something about those events, we can then develop a demonstration, and we would flag those events as request exclusion instead of informational only. So when we request exclusion and we develop a demonstration for those events, we then submit it to EPA for approval or denial. EPA will review what we've submitted. If they then concur, if they approve it, then those values are, while they remain in the database, they're flagged in such a way that they are removed from attainment or non-attainment, also known as design value calculations. So this would be a case where if we wrote a demonstration up for that August 21st through 25th time period where we know there was significant wildfire smoke influences, the values would then effectively drop to, it's actually for the fourth max values, it's 69 and 68 coincidentally, but the 3-year average would also be 69 for the Air Force Academy, and Manitou Springs it would be 68. So that's kind of where we're at the moment. It's interesting to note EPA only does area designations when the NACs are reviewed. So this is what's playing into things as well. They just did a review of the standards last year. So they wouldn't actually not look at doing area designations for another 4 to 5 years from now. We are at the point where all the 2020 data have been validated. So our management is reviewing, and decisions will be made in the near future on what the next steps are, and writing up possible event demonstrations. If we wrote up this demonstration, EPA would take a look at it. There's a couple of ways they can go. One is they would concur and send us a letter saying, yep, we're going to concur, we're going to remove them from, essentially flag them so that they wouldn't be used for designations. Or they could potentially, since they're in the middle of their cycle, they could essentially respond with a deferral letter where they say, yep, we agree with it, but since there's no regulatory significance, we're not going to take any action at this point. But we still have it on the books in case there are questions in the future, whatever the case. So I think certainly keeping on pursuing your work as far as the Ozone Advanced program would be very beneficial at this point. But that's kind of where we're at, and so we would welcome any thoughts from PPACG and the board as to what their feelings are going forward with writing up exceptional event demonstrations for the August 21st through 25th timeframe. Next slide, please. So just to cover quickly the other pollutants that are monitored in the area as to what are things looking like. Carbon monoxide is really a success story nationwide. It's been a downward trend. It's kind of stabilized out now, but a lot of it is really based on catalytic converters and computer controls on vehicles. And as of October 2019, the Colorado Springs CO maintenance area has met its obligations to demonstrate maintenance for 20 years. When an area goes into non-attainment, there's obviously the non-attainment, the state implementation plans that need to be developed. When an area meets those, comes back into compliance with the standards, then the area goes into what's called maintenance, and a maintenance plan is developed. Those maintenance plans last for 20 years. So when an area goes into non-attainment, or even when it comes back into attainment, it's not a short time frame to get out of additional regulatory requirements. But whatever the case, we've met it for carbon monoxide. So the area is no longer required to address the transportation conformity determination requirements for its tip, and general conformity requirements no longer apply for the area. And those have been confirmed by EPA. Next slide. Sulfur dioxide. As you can see, there's also been a huge downward trend here. The standard is based on the 3-year average of the 99th percentile, but I've put just the hourly, the 1 hour annual max 99th percentile values on the right-hand side, just so you can see it more on an annual basis, how that trend has really dropped. And you can really see where when the controls went onto Drake back in the 2016 to 2018 timeframe, the values really dropped in that time frame. So that's a success story there as well. Next slide. For PM 2.5, really is no trend at all. Levels have been pretty stable. The good part is over that time frame, population and traffic have increased quite a bit. So the fact that it isn't, the PM 2.5 trends aren't increasing, that's still a success. And we don't see a lot of, even in other areas of Colorado, we don't see a lot of significant trends in PM 2.5 either. And the levels are certainly well below the standards there, as you can see. Next slide. And for PM10, you can see there was a downward trend back in the late 1980s. The standard came into effect in 1987 there, through the 1990s, and then through the 2020s, it's really been pretty stable with no real trend. You do get a lot more kind of bouncing around with PM10 as it's much more related to dust, especially with the high winds blowing dust. That's when we tend to see the spikes. And as you can see, it's certainly well below the max of 150 micrograms per cubic meter. So we don't see any issues with PM10 either. And I think next slide, that's what I have as far as an overview of ozone and other pollutants today. If you have any questions.
Yes, thank you, Gordon. I appreciate your presentation. Are there any questions for Gordon? And I do believe there is an ask in there with regard to the ozone. And maybe we could go back to that chart, because I think you have an ask about what the PPACG board sentiment would be on that. So if we could go to that chart, and then I'll just open up the floor if anybody has comments.
Does that be slide 5, please? Or, I'm sorry, slide 6.
There we go. Thank you.
Yep.
Are there any comments or questions or interests with regard to this request from Gordon about our sense of whether to request an exclusion or not.
Mr. Chair, if I could, just to kind of kick things off, this is Andy. We did share this presentation with our Air Quality Technical Committee as well, and I know they're going to have a discussion around this at their next meeting at the end of March. Did hear back from at least one committee member, a representative from Colorado Springs Utilities, and did urge the board to go ahead and seek those exclusions. Thought it was in our best interest for the region, so just thought I'd put that forward as well. And that would be our recommendation as staff as well, that we work with CDPHE to help seek those wildfire readings be excluded.
Thank you. And any comments to Andy or Gordon then?
Yeah, this is Holly. I would support requesting the exclusion of events.
Thank you, Holly. Any other comments?
John Graham, Manitou. I would also support requesting exclusion of the wildfire events.
Thank you, John. Any other comments? And I will concur with those two board members' comments. I think it is appropriate to request the exclusion. I think it is demonstrable that they were exceptional events. And it does have an impact on a regulatory side about whether this is excluded or not, as to whether we go from one set of potential actions to a different set of potential actions. So I think it does have a regulatory impact. So that would be my recommendation as well. And perhaps I could ask a separate question: is there anybody on the board that would have a problem with having that sentiment about requesting the exclusion? And hearing none, Gordon, I think maybe we are in a position to ask that maybe that you would go forward with requesting an exclusion. For whatever it's worth, maybe one last question. I'm sure that there were impacts with regard to this ozone in other locations across the state. Do you have a similar sentiment from others, or are you just starting out talking to different groups, or where's the sentiment from the rest of the state? Where are they?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yes, the only really Colorado Springs is the area where it has the most significant impact. There aren't, other than the Denver North Front Range area, yes, it increased the levels in other areas of Colorado, but it didn't put them into a potential non-attainment scenario. So there's really nothing that we need to do in those other areas. We are certainly looking at it for the Denver North Front Range area. Not that it would bring us down. It's a little different. It would not bring us down below the level of the NACs for that area. But it does make a difference when we start looking forward to the, not only 2020, but the next 2 years as far as 3-year averages. So we're definitely looking at it for the North Front Range as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for that reply. And I think in our sentiment of requesting an exclusion, I think it's interesting, where without that, we might be the most impacted here with regard to going from generally in attainment to generally not in attainment. Having said that, making the request for the exclusion, I think that does not preclude our continued interest in doing what we can to over the long period to stay in attainment. So I think we still have that continued work to do, but in this particular case, because it's an exceptional event, I think requesting the exclusion is appropriate, and I think that's where our board is. So thank you, Gordon.
Thank you. You're welcome. We will take that forward.
All right, very good. Any other last comments, questions, or concerns about this topic? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Gordon, very much. Let's move on to the consent items. And we have 3 items under consent: approval of the minutes, summary of the financials, and some membership appointments.
Mr. Chair, if I could interrupt for a second, we have a lot of special guests that are joining us today, and we now have Representative Terry Carver on the line. I think she's still on the line between sessions. So with your indulgence, if you wanted to take a few minutes to hear from the representative, that would be super. Then I know that one of the representatives from CDPHE, Dina Wojtak, is also going to say a few words about the greenhouse gas emissions item as well. But if Representative Carver's on the line, we could open up.
I
am.
Super.
Yes. Hello, Terry. Please go ahead and proceed.
Oh, thank you. Well, I just wanted to give you an update on wildfire mitigation funding. We had a supplemental, which obviously adds money to our current fiscal year, several additional millions of dollars for mitigation grants. And obviously city, county, neighborhoods, fire protection districts, all of those entities are eligible to apply for these mitigation grants. And depending upon financial circumstances, you're either looking at a 50% match or a 25% match, but that can be done in kind. So we do have this additional funding available, and just wanted to make everybody aware of that. I'm going to be getting information from the Colorado Forest Service, which administers the grant program, on if there's any change in the grant process and timing of that. So I would be glad to send that along, but I know we've got plenty of mitigation issues in El Paso and also with our neighboring counties. And so this would be an opportunity to make use of some of that money. So that is basically what I wanted to alert you to. Well, and perhaps one other thing. We do have a bill that passed that I was glad to run that established the Fire Commission. We do have regional representatives on that Fire Commission, and we're going to be acting on their first set of recommendations, but it's across a range of topics. It's fire prevention. It's most of the recommendations are also focused on how we do a more robust, a stronger regional approach to putting the fires out quickly, and then also mitigation. So all of those, but as we're seeing how this year is looking as far as risk of fire, please don't forget to coordinate with those on the Fire Commission, because that is another route to try and get those issues addressed. So with that, that's all I have at the moment. Any questions?
Thank you, Representative Carver. Are there any questions for the representative? And hearing none, I don't know much about the Fire Commissions, Andy, so maybe we could have a conversation about that. I presume we may have a representative that does represent our area, and it'd be great to know who that is.
I'll identify that and send you an overview of what they do. I think it's an important commission to tie into and develop a relationship with.
I'm sorry.
If I may, is Dick Elsner in attendance?
Commissioner
He is not. He was not able to be here today.
He had asked me to contact him on a particular issue, and unfortunately, I must have written his phone number down wrong. Could you get word to him if he could please text me his phone number? I do want to be responsive to his request, and just feel free to give him my cell phone number.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi, this is Margaret Peterson from Green Mountain Falls, Representative Carr. And could you please leave your contact information maybe in the chat or something? Because I know we've got a newly formed fire mitigation committee, and I know we are looking for funding and looking for a lot of different things. And I'd really like to reach out to you for more information on this.
Absolutely. I'm actually calling in by phone, but let me just give you my cell phone number, and then text me your cell phone number. Let's sit down and at first opportunity and talk just as soon as this new money becomes available. You know, we need to jump on it, and I'm well aware of you know, your situation in Green Mountain Falls, and this is we have an opportunity to really address some of those issues with this money.
Wonderful.
So my cell phone number, and you know, all members, PPACG, feel free to contact me anytime on this number. It's 719-425-7590.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great. Are there any other questions for Representative Carver? And I think that was outstanding to have that conversation with Margaret from Green Mountain Falls, because maybe there's a potential opportunity there. My sense of it is while we've done a lot of fire mitigation work in our community, I think we still have a lot to do. So if there's additional funds available, I would encourage everybody to talk to their local teams that work on fire mitigation and encourage them to pursue that additional funding. Was there anybody else? I thought I saw somebody else that wanted to speak just for a second. Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Representative Carver. Thank you, Terry. Appreciate your coming online for a few minutes and talking about some of the work you're doing.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay. Now, Andy, we're at our consent items, but there was another person I think you wanted to speak for a moment.
Yeah, if Dina Wojtek from CDPHE is still on the line, I think she just wanted to give some final comments on the presentation item around the greenhouse gas emissions roadmap. Dina, are you still there?
Yeah, so I apologize. I should have introduced myself earlier, but I'm with CDPHE in the Air Pollution Control Division, and I am the Planning and Policy Program Manager there. I wanted to follow up to the chair's question about international ozone and greenhouse gas emissions and how they're treated in terms of the goals and reductions. And the answer really depends on the pollutant. So in terms of greenhouse gas reductions, those goals are based on greenhouse gases that were emitted in Colorado and based on the baseline that was set for 2005. And so that was set, and then that's memorialized in the greenhouse gas roadmap that was mentioned earlier in Teresa's presentation. And if you want, I can give you a link to that if you're at all interested. And I will say that the reductions then will be measured in terms of reductions that are happening here in Colorado. So all of that is local and is not dealing with international, although there is, our contribution helps globally with climate change. So just want to recognize that. Ozone is a little different. I think Gordon spoke to that a bit. Ozone is monitored. Actually, we do ambient monitoring. And so we're measuring ozone regardless of where it's generated here or elsewhere. And unfortunately, there's very specific methodologies that we have to follow in terms of determining how Colorado is faring against national standards. And so there is the difference. And I hope that answers your questions.
Thank you, Dana. That actually was interesting. I didn't realize that there's a lot of work done to, if I understood correctly, to remove any international events, let's say maybe, from the state calculations, and that when we make these requests, we're talking about what we're doing, in the state, which I think is the right way to do the work. So it's good to hear that.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, any last questions for Dana or for CDOT then, before we move on? And hearing none, let's now move over to our consent items. And again, we have the 3 items, the minutes, the summary of financials, and the membership appointments. Are there any comments or questions to any of these items at this point?
I would move, this is Sharon Thompson. I would move to approve to oh my gosh, I'll start that again. This is Sharon Thompson. I move to approve the consent items.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second, Jill.
Okay, thank you, Jill. That's a motion. That's a motion and a second. Any comments or other questions on these items? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And are there any opposed? All right, hearing none, those pass unanimously. Let's move on to item number 5. And we have first the fiscal year 2021 to 2024 TIP Amendment 10.
Good morning, Catherine Wenger, Transportation Planner, PPACG. This item is for as it says, TIP Amendment number 10 for our fiscal year 21 through 24 TIP, which is our current TIP document. The TIP is our Transportation Improvement Program, or our short-range planning program that lists all federal and state funding that's happening in our region. And so occasionally we do need to make updates based on different various items that have changed in the document. And so that's what this is, a request to make those updates. We have 2 requests from CDOT and 1 from our PPACG region. The first 2 are from CDOT. The first one is for US 24 West Woodland Park to divide. This is to update the project costs and the fiscal year per the CDOT request. The project is being advanced. And then the next one is for the Bill Grant / Mansip project for the I-25 corridor and South Academy Bridge portion of that project. It's a larger project under MAMSIP, but this is just for this specific part. This is to update the project costs to reflect the most up-to-date funding types and allocations. When we originally put this in the TIP, it was based on estimates on what would be available at the time. And so CDOT has requested to make these updates to the state source. And then finally, we had the PPACG stimulus funds, or relief payments, as we're calling them. Back in December, there was some relief funds included, or some stimulus funds included for transportation in the relief bill. And so this portion is for the PPACG region, and you all approved doing a relief payments allocation pool for some of our members so that they could help, with transportation costs due to COVID. And so this is based on the allocations you all recommended last month. And so we're putting it into a pooled project to go into the TIP, and then they will be available based on the allocations you see on page 2. With that, I can take any questions that you might have.
Great. Are there any questions for Catherine? All right, hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Holly Williams, I move approval of TIP Amendment number 10.
I'm sorry, I think I heard 2. Was that Mr. Wilson and Ms. Thompson?
Yes.
Dawn can have it.
Thank you. All right, so that's been moved in second, with the second from Mayor Wilson. All right, are there any other comments or questions with regard to TIP Amendment 10? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And are there any opposed? And I don't hear any opposition, so that passes unanimously. Let's move on to the next item. This is the action item 5B, Front Range Passenger Rail Commission appointment. And we had a conversation about this in our last board meeting. Great conversation. We know that Jill Gabler is interested in this position. And I have not to date heard anybody else expressing an interest. So today will be our day that we will need to vote on this to appoint our representative. And I know, again, that Jill is interested, so I'd be interested in a motion and a second with respect to Jill Gabler.
Holly Williams, it is an honor to move that Jill Gabler continue to serve on this commission for the next 2 years.
Sharon Thompson, I second that.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. And it is appropriate in any one of these meetings to allow for other people to allow for other motions for other people. So I'd like to open the floor if anybody wishes to make a motion for someone else to be a representative on this commission. And hearing none, let's go ahead and, well, I'll just ask, does anybody have any questions or comments, or anybody need to hear anything from Jill Gabler about what she's hoping to do on the commission, or what she's already done stuff, but this is about going forward?
Yeah, Commissioner Vanderwerf, I'd love to say a couple words if that's possible.
Please go ahead.
I just wanted to thank those who have supported this continuation for me as the on the Commission for Front Range Passenger Rail. We did receive letters from our Director of Public Works at the City of Colorado Springs and Craig Blewett, who runs Mountain Metro, and my council member, Wayne Williams, also sent a really nice letter to all of us yesterday, which I wasn't expecting. And I'm always impressed by his knowledge of the history of our region and our state, and how others, and to include himself, have continued on roles, specifically Stack in his case, after they have left elected office. So I appreciate the support and would be honored to continue serving PPACG in our region for years on this commission.
You and I have to start getting sleep.
Yeah, thank you so much for your comments. Anybody else have any comments or questions for Councilwoman Gabler? All right, hearing none, let's proceed with the vote. All those in favor of Councilwoman Gabler being our commission appointment for the Front Range Rail Commission, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And is there any opposed? And hearing none, congratulations, Jill. Thank you for stepping up, even after stepping out of your elected position. We appreciate the work you do on that commission and look forward to great work continuing into the future.
Thank you. And it'll give me an opportunity to come back and provide you updates occasionally. So you're not getting rid of me.
I think we will need those. We're looking forward to that.
Me too.
All right, very good. Any last comments on that item before we move on? All right, hearing none, let's move to 5C, the legislative update.
Good morning, Board. Jessica McMullen, your Policy and Communications Manager. So I am here for your legislative session update, and this has got two main parts. It's got our transportation policy, statewide transportation funding policy statement, and the update on positions from the legislative committee on bills that have already been introduced. So we're going to start with the policy position on statewide transportation funding. During the legislative session, things are going to move very quickly. We know that with this session, pretty much starting on February 16th, even though they don't know when it's going to end, we're expecting that things will move very quickly. Within that knowledge, we realized that PPACG has been hearing the same things, and they're important messages from our board members for many years now. And we wanted to make sure that we were reflecting that in a way that we could proactively send that to our legislators and partners. Within that, the PPACG Legislative Committee took on the task of developing a statement. The committee reviewed it, brought it to our board workshop last week and got a few recommendations for some changes. That's why you received an update, revised agenda with that information, with the goal of focusing on this. I'm gonna give you guys a quick run through, I'm sure you already saw it, of those major themes of it rather than going into the details. And those major themes are: transportation is important. Everyone needs to pay their proportional share. A complete state system is important. Any solution needs to address needs across different levels of government. We need to lockbox any new funding. The most cost-effective trip is the one you don't have to make, and the need to keep the conversation focused. These were the main principles that we had heard not all of our jurisdictions are going to agree on every single issue or every single detail of a transportation funding. But the policy statement that we've developed, we hope reflects the needs of the entire PPACG region, especially considering transportation funding hasn't been addressed since the early 90s. Transportation funding is an urgent need throughout the entire state, but according to the recent Road Information Program TRIP report, area residents in the Pikes Peak area lose $838 annually from congestion and another $644 due to road conditions. Continuing without doing anything doesn't make sense. So we are hoping that all of the PPACG board members would support this statement to address the statewide transportation funding shortfall.
Thank you, Jessica. Appreciate that. And at this point, if any of the legislative committee would like to make some comments with regard to this item.
I just really appreciate the work the staff put in on this. We came up with an idea for this, and John Liazatos and Andy, and I'm not sure who all were really involved in this, and really came up with this very thorough document for us to look over and maybe tweak a little bit, but I really appreciate all the time and effort. I did want to point out there was one sentence we were adding to it at the top, if you could scroll back to that, Jessica, and it's in red on the top there, and that's really about the only thing we've added to this document since the last time some of you have seen that. And that was a suggestion from a couple of members just to really stress really the urgent need for the funding to continue because of how far behind we are on many projects. So thank you everybody for all your hard work on this.
Great. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Commissioner Williams, you'd like to speak? Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Williams. This just represents a lot of work every Monday morning for probably 4 weeks now, from a beginning document to one that we've had weigh in from John Southers on, and weigh in from our own Commissioner Hickey, who is also on the phone call here. And I just think that it's a very well done document. I think it's going to help when this transportation bill drops, and it kind of sets a good framework for our state representatives and senators to look and say, yeah, I think that this would work with what PPACG considers important.
Great, thank you. Other comments?
If I may, Commissioner Stan?
Yes, go ahead, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa Hickey, Commissioner and Transportation Commissioner. I wanted to join to say thank you for all of this hard work. It, I think, is appropriate and balanced, and I mentioned it to a few folks at CDOT, and they're looking forward to hearing your input, as I know that most importantly, the legislators will also. I think this focus and the added statement about the critical nature of the need for funding in this session, if possible, I think will be important for our recovery in this region. And I am appreciating all of the discussion about infrastructure and transportation all around when in my travels. Even the city council candidates are talking about the importance of infrastructure, and people out in the Hinter County areas within my district are. So I appreciate you focusing on this issue. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. And I believe you did contribute to this as well, because in our last meeting, you talked a little bit about expressing some of the urgency, and that actually is a very important point. So thank you for that contribution also.
Thank you, Commissioner Stan.
Thank you. Any other comments with regard to this document? All right. I'll go ahead and entertain a motion at this point. If anybody would like to make a motion for this document, which is our position on statewide transportation funding.
Commissioner Williams, I would move that we approve the document as presented.
Okay, and For clarity, for purposes of voting, the document as presented will include the redlined items that were added at this Monday's legislative committee meeting. Okay, is there a second?
John Graham Manitou, all second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Any last comments on this item? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are there any? Awesome. Are there any opposed? All right, hearing none, this passes unanimously, and I'm going to make a few points. I think this is an outstanding document. I appreciate the legislative committee's work and the other inputs that we've received. I'm highly encouraged about this. I think actually it's going to have a lot of influence because it's balanced, it's comprehensive, it expresses the urgency, and I think our legislators in Denver will want to read this. I think they'll find it to be very interesting. So great job, everybody on the legislative committee, and my appreciation to this board for voting in favor of this item unanimously. All right, excellent. Let's move on to number 6, information items.
Real quick,
And the
can I
first is-
go back and have us do the second half of this item, which is confirming the legislative positions?
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the correction.
So as you know, the legislative committee reviews bills that the lobbyist or I or anyone else pinpoints as maybe of interest to PPACG. The legislative committee then reviews those, and on a 2/3 vote will bring their recommendations to the board of directors. The list of bills we've reviewed and our proposed positions were included in that attachment. I am going to run. Does anybody have any questions about any of the bills? We had quite a few in this, so rather than run through them individually, I'd rather ask you all if you'd like more information on a bill, why a position was taken, or any of that information, or if any of our legislative committee would like to chime in about any specific bill and its importance.
And while we're doing that, while we have the conversation, if we could scroll down and make sure we have an opportunity to see on the screen everything that has been considered by the legislative committee. So is it my understanding that there's none that the legislative committee is proposing in opposition at this point?
That is correct. At this point, none of the bills that have been proposed, the legislative committee has requested us to oppose.
Okay, thank you.
Stan, just a reminder for everybody, there might be bills we would want to oppose maybe as a municipality or in another range, but we have to select the areas that bills apply to PPACG. And that's always our first question when any bill is brought to us. Is this a PPACG issue? Does it have to do with what we're doing with transportation, military, aging, ozone, or water? So that's why you may think that one might be on there. But if it's not a PPACG issue, we're very careful not to spread ourselves too thin in the legislative world.
Thank you, Sharon. And to be fair, while some of these bills I know, a fair amount about, there are others on this list I know very little about. So I think this is one of those situations where we either have to have a conversation about those or decide that we trust the legislative committee with their deliberations. So I do think it is important that if anybody has any questions about any one of these items, maybe even if it's just a clarification question about what that bill is proposing, and now's the time to speak on that.
And we do welcome anybody at our meetings. They're open to everybody in the membership. All the elected officials, we meet Mondays at 8:30 in the morning via Zoom. So if there's a particular bill you'd like to bring to us or anything, we'd love to have you Zoom in with us.
We would, and if anybody has any questions about bills that they run into later and would like us to follow in, I can happily follow up with any board member who's got an interest in really digging in on any of these bills, beyond today, obviously, or if they've got an interest in us exploring another.
Well, just aren't we the energetic group this morning? Nothing.
Let's hurry up. Let's hurry up and vote before we lose our quorum. People are dropping off.
I would move approval of this list of support and monitor bills.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second, John Graham, Manitou.
Okay, there's a motion. There's a motion and a second. And I would encourage, if we do take a vote, and if we do in fact vote in favor of these, I would encourage the board members, if you still have questions on any of these, please reach out to the legislative committee or the PPACG staff. Let's make sure that everybody understands these as deeply as you feel necessary to make sure that you know, you might find yourself maybe having a concern about the position that PPACG is taking. All right, are there any last comments or questions then? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, thank you to the legislative committee. These are now our official position. And I think for myself, there are a few there that I'm gonna wanna just learn a little bit more about, but I'll do that in a post-board meeting activity, not at this time. All right, thank you very much, Jessica, for reminding me that we had a second item there on the legislative update. There isn't a third item, is there?
There is not.
Okay, very good. Let's move then to 6 information items. And the first one is 6A, COVID vaccine update for senior population.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to hand this off to Melissa Martz in our AAA. Take it away, Melissa.
So good morning, board and Chair Vanderwerf. I hope all can hear me well. I'm on my cell phone talking. Thanks. So I wanted to share just a few updates here so that people are aware, and if you have any questions about the vaccine process going on in our 3 counties, you can ask and we can research, or we might have answers right now. And so, you know, since this all started a year ago, fortunately, our AAA and the AAAs across the state have been incredibly flexible and responsive during all of this time, as have so many folks. And we are pleased that our state AAA has actually put together a document that talks about things that have happened over the course of time. And that's what was attached in your packet for today's meeting. And so some good reading if you are up for it, talking about the different responses that have happened across the state on behalf of older adults. Right now, our big focus is working and tackling the idea of getting vaccines to homebound older adults. And our state AAA has given us a list of individuals that are in our system who are identified as homebound. That number is 1,137 across El Paso, Park, and Teller County. That does not include all individuals who would be homebound. And so there is still an effort underway with Colorado Springs Fire Department, with the Pikes Peak Elder Abuse Coalition, looking at who else might be considered a homebound adult that we don't even know about. And as we start to get those names, there's going to be efforts to call out, find out if they want to get vaccinations, and then get that set up for those incredibly vulnerable folks, including their caregivers as well. And as we speak right now, there continues to be pop-up clinics. So in addition to all the vaccine opportunities through pharmacies and doctor's offices, our Peak Vista and El Paso County Public Health and Park County Public Health continue to do specific stand-up clinics. And so some of the ones in El Paso County are specifically for communities of color. And today there is one happening at Hillside Community Center, and today and tomorrow at Peak Vista. And then on the 13th, March 13th, at the Southeast YMCA. And if anybody has questions about how to get in touch with those specific clinics, there are phone numbers specifically. I have those. There's also signups online. Of course, the ones that are happening today, there could still be some openings, but they might be full. But very excited about the efforts that have been happening just every minute, day by day, it changes. And then for those people who need rides to vaccination clinics, of course, the transit providers have come together and they have the Mobility on Demand phone number. And so individuals can call that number and get transportation set up at no charge to get to those vaccination clinics. So that's a really important resource that was put together thanks to the work of our transportation providers and Laura Cruz with the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. And then the last I wanted to mention is Park County and the work that they have been doing up there to get older adults vaccinated. And they have multiple clinics running. Right now they are all full, but they have clinics happening in Bailey and in Fairplay. So completely booked right now, but they have those going on all the time. And they remind us that people can register, but only register if your group is currently up to be vaccinated. So they are not taking people and taking names for later, vaccination groups. You have to be in the group now. And of course, that being said, many people know, but just a reminder that you can travel anywhere to get your vaccine. And so many of those folks in Park County actually head up over into Summit County to get vaccinated. They will often also come, to Teller County and down into El Paso County, as well as Denver and Jefferson County. So, and those are always options that people can do too. So that is my update. And I think I might have forgotten just to mention, so my name is Melissa Martz, and I'm the Program Development Administrator for the Area Agency on Aging and filling in for Jody today. And if anyone has any questions, I'm open to those. Otherwise, I can be reached at my email, mmartz@ppacg.org.
Great. Are there any questions for Melissa? I'm sorry, was there one just there?
Yeah, sorry. Hi, this is Margaret Peterson in Green Mountain Falls. Melissa, I just have a real quick question. What processes do you guys have in place for assisting seniors to sign up if they can't navigate computers to sign up, or how are they made aware? What's your system?
So first of all, the biggest issue is how to get folks to be aware of things that don't have access to technology. And so, hopefully their neighbors are looking out for them. Hopefully they're watching the news. There are phone numbers. And so an older adult who does not have access to a computer, hopefully they have access to a telephone, and they can call a phone number and get set up. The easiest thing to do is to call one of the specific numbers that are related to where they might want to get their vaccine. And so again, if they are watching the news or if they have a neighbor that can be watching out for them, for example, if they wanted to get signed up at the Peak Vista, vaccination clinic or the Southeast Y happening this Saturday, there's a specific phone number for that. They can get those phone numbers by calling just 211. Just pick up the phone, call 211, and 211 can give them the phone number. We can also give them the phone number here too at the AAA. So there are phone numbers, and we've heard really good responses from those phone number services. And I can say that I was at the vaccination clinic that happened this past weekend down at the Southeast Public Health location in El Paso County. And they were just running people through, and they were full. And so folks are able to call and make those appointments and get in. And so hopefully that helps, Margaret. If you want some specific phone numbers, I do have a fact sheet and I can email that to you.
That would be wonderful, because I think the more literature that's out there to make people aware, and especially with the elderly population, because a lot of them are at home and they just are at home, and just being able to even put something on a community bulletin board or something so that if somebody sees it, they know.
Great.
Thank you.
This is Sharon Thompson.
Please.
I would like to give a shout out to the 3 providers for the transportation, Invita, Silver Key, and Fountain Valley Senior Center. With less than 48 hours notice before one of the first pop-up clinics, they were able to scramble around and provide rides to seniors to get to their clinics. So I know, Melissa, you said providers, but I would just like to give a shout out because we do hear a lot of their names through here quite often for funding. And they really stepped up to the plate and are continuing to step up to the plate and making sure that our seniors and are getting the information they need and the rides to those clinics. And that's the most important thing right there for some of them is the rides. And so they are making it happen. So thank you to Silver Key, Invita, and Fountain Valley Senior Center.
Great, that's awesome. Thank you. Any other comments? And just a quick one for me. I'm looking at the documentation. I see that you've got a website, www.c4a-colorado.org. And, now it piques my interest because, we have our area agency on aging here in our region. But since this is an association, that must mean that there's numerous other agencies that are connected to the state level through this association. So I don't know much about that. Can I presume that if I go on that website, I'll learn about those kinds of things?
You bet. Yes. And it's, yeah, you'll see how they're divided up across the state and, who's leading those organizations in each different jurisdiction, and learn much more.
Okay, great. And maybe just one quick question about that. How many members are there in the association? How many of these area agencies on aging do we have in the state? And if you don't know, if it's just kind of a general number, that'd be good too.
Andy might speak up. There's over 14, I believe. So there might be. Go ahead, Andy. If you.
I was going to say 15, but don't hold me to it. It's between 14 and 18, I think. And they do outstanding collaboration on a regular basis. And Mr. Chair, we'd be happy to get you connected with Jody, and he can let you know about all the awesome stuff they do.
Great, outstanding. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this topic? All right, thank you very much. Melissa, I appreciate your time. Let's move on to 6B, this Stip and Tip Alignment.
Good morning, it's Catherine Winger, PPACG. Right, so this item is related to aligning our TIP document, or our Transportation Improvement Program, with the STIP, which is the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, and their version of the short range plan. And by our TIP document actually gets incorporated into the STIP document by reference. And so in order to do that, we need to be in alignment as far as fiscal year is concerned. And so recently, CDOT actually moved to doing, or in a couple years ago actually, doing an annual STIP. And this has caused issues with being in alignment with our TIP, which we do every 2 years. So that kind of creates an issue with, currently right now we have, CDOT is going to adopt a TIP or a STIP that has fiscal year 25, and we don't have that in our TIP. So we've been asked to correct this issue, or do this as quickly as, or fix the issue as quickly as possible, so that there's no lapse in the ability for CDOT to, excuse me, my computer's going on, for CDOT to obligate funds in a timely manner. So to do this, there's a couple items that we have to do. So we have recommended to TAC, and CAC both recommend this as well, that we adopt 2 TIPs back to back, so that this next one would be adopting one, so we can add fiscal year 25 CDOT projects. And then the next one would add additional years as well. And so then the next document would be FY 22 through 25. And so that would still be 4 years, so that we could get up to current with 25 for CDOT projects. And then we would start a new process this summer, or kind of late spring, to do a 23 through 27 TIP. And that would incorporate local agency projects and CDOT as well. So all that to say, and then so that would bring us into current with the STIP this year. But in future years, if we do not make a change as far as how many years are in the TIP, then we'll fall out of alignment again with CDOT's thing. So we're recommending adopting 5-year TIPs from now on, but still remaining on a 2-year cycle. So this first new TIP would be, we would do, the 22 through 25, and then 23 through 27, and do call for projects for 3 years out. And then from here on, we would do 5-year TIPs. And so what this all means for you and why we're bringing it to you is just to let you know that we are adopting 2 TIPs back to back, and we're switching and proposing to switch from 4 to a 5-year TIP. And that for you, that means there's quite a few things that are going to be coming through the boards in the next coming months or over this next year. And so we wanted to give you a heads up that quite a few things will be coming. And so essentially for the FY22 through 25 TIP, we're going to be starting next month, bringing drafts to you for the document. We're going to be holding a public comment period, a public hearing, and then requesting final adoption of that document in August. And then for the 23 through 27 TIP, the first one that would be a 5-year document would be starting in May for call for projects. This happens through the TAC process. The TAC members do this and work with their local jurisdictions on recommending projects. And then we'll be seeing the draft in the fall, and we would have our public comment period and public hearings and public open houses for that in October, and then final recommended adoption in January. And so there'll be quite a few things coming, and I'm happy to take any questions on this. There's quite a few fiscal year numbers being thrown out there, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any comments for Catherine on item 6B? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much for the update. And at this point, we're going to go into reports, but if you all will indulge me, I'd like us to take a quick comfort break and come back in about 2 or 3 minutes, just in case anybody needs to take care of business a little bit, and we'll come back in 2 or 3 minutes. So thank you very much. Let's come back to the meeting. We are at this point going to item 7, and we'll start with our military installation reports. I'll just go down the list on the list of board of directors. And do we have Fort Carson, or is there something we need to talk about in advance of this? All right, very good. Is Fort Carson on the line? All right, how about Peterson Air Force Base? Or Schriever Air Force Base? Well, how about the Air Force Academy?
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me okay?
We sure can, thank you.
Hi, this is Melissa Porter from the Air Force Academy. I have just a few updates for the board. We continue to hold our COVID vaccination clinics as we receive the vaccine supplies. And while I can't give specifics, I can say that a good percentage of USAFA personnel have received one, if not both, vaccine doses. And so we anticipate being able to open up vaccines to a larger portion of our retiree population in the very near future. And we will be sending information out to those beneficiaries as these opportunities open up. We do have a couple of changes of command coming up this summer. In June, the Mission Support Group Commander, Colonel Andre Johnson, will relinquish command to Colonel Bill Sullivan. And also in June, we will be saying farewell to our wing commander, Brigadier General Select Brian Hartless, who will be returning to the Pentagon this summer. Taking command is Colonel Chris Leonard, who is coming to us from the Pentagon. Colonel Leonard is also a 1997 grad of the Academy, so he's not only familiar with the mission, but also with the community. So we look forward to his return back here. And then last, something I know everybody has been looking forward to, the Falcon football schedule has been released. There are 6 home games on the schedule to include the season opener on 4 September against Lafayette. We will also host Utah State, Florida Atlantic, Wyoming, San Diego State, and UNLV this season. We're hopeful to be able to get to open these games up to the public, but of course that all is dependent on what the COVID situation is in the fall. And that's all I have, unless there are any questions.
Are there any questions for Melissa? Okay, hearing none. Thank you for the update on the change of command ceremony and also the football update. I did not know that Brigadier General Select Heartless was departing. I guess that was inevitable. I did work with him prior to 2020. This was in late 19 regarding the PFOA, things going on at the Academy. If you could send my regards to him, I wish him the best going to the Pentagon, and I appreciate our working together on that issue in the fall of 19.
Yes, sir, will do.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments for the Air Force Academy? All right, hearing none. Obviously, 7B through 7F are the minutes are included. No reports. Are there any questions, however, on any of these items? And hearing none, let's move on to 7G, the CDOT monthly update.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to start out here, and then I'm going to turn it over to Shane Ferguson for some actual project updates as well. But the first topic I wanted to bring to your attention is a topic we're going to be discussing at STAC tomorrow. And it's the proposal for year 3 Senate Bill 267 funding and what those projects may look like. And so with regard to projects that will be of interest to this group, of course, is State Highway 21 Research Parkway Interchange. If you recall, we received a loan from the Transportation Commission to advance that project, and it's scheduled for advertisement at the end of this month. But out of this pot of funding, we're looking to repay that loan back to the Transportation Commission. We also, a project that's not necessarily in Pikes Peak COG area, but does have implications for the group is we have a project plan on State Highway 115. It's safety and paving improvements from mile markers 20 to 39. So it straddles the Fremont and El Paso County lines in terms of a project. We also have some other transit related projects looking to Colorado Springs Downtown Transit Center. And then also some pre-construction funding for Woodman Road Mobility Hub and for the Monument Park and Ride. And so, as I said, that'll be discussed tomorrow with STAC and then with Transportation Commission the following week, and proceeding hopefully, with adoption at sometime in the April to May timeframe to actually receive formal approval of the list from the Transportation Commission. So, it's an exciting list of projects. I think we have statewide, and I think it's, to the benefit of the entire region and for Region 2. The only other item I wanted to bring to your attention, I think most folks have been listening to the weather forecast, and we do have a pending major storm looming on the horizon. We've actually tried to get out in front of that, and we're encouraging folks to actually not planning on traveling around the area Friday through Sunday, because it looks like that's going to be the major impacts of the storm. So, as you're sharing information with your constituents, I would suggest, keeping an eye on that. And, we're going to be all hands on decks from the CDOT side. I'm sure the same can be said for the county and for the city, but it is looking right now to be a very, very significant storm with, potential snowfall reaching a couple of feet. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shane Ferguson.
Thanks, Rich.
Mr. Zamora, I have a really quick question.
Sure.
You said STAC tomorrow. I have STAC on my calendar for Friday.
I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's Friday morning. I apologize.
Okay, just giving me a little heart attack here for a second. Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep, I'm one day ahead in the week. I apologize.
That's okay.
Thanks, Rich. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Board of Directors. Shane Ferguson, the North Program Engineer for CDOT Region 2. As Rich said, we're currently gearing up for an extremely busy construction season this year. We're well underway to advertise the project at Research and Powers on March 25th. The contractors will have about a 4-week period of time to prepare their bids and open. We would expect from this schedule to see some activity, I'm hoping mid-June, mid to late June at the intersection, with primarily looking at the first activities being striping, setting up the traffic control, and setting up just really gearing up for that intersection to be quite disrupted, to be very honest, but we're still move traffic through. But it's going to be an exciting project. I would say if you're considering what are we going to do as far as when we're going to see activity with the bridges themselves, it'll probably be in the fall timeframe where you start seeing that type of activity on that project. Regarding the MANSIP project, we're expecting the first piece, or this next piece, to be the I-25 in the Academy bridges at that interchange, to start working on those bridges to be replaced. Hoping that activity begins late spring, early summer as well, followed by activity on mainline I-25 this summer. We also expect to see activity on Charter Oaks Ranch Road as well as State Highway 94 this summer. Additional projects to discuss throughout the area and the region. We have a surface treatment project. I think I've mentioned a couple of times that will be beginning this spring on ramps of I-25, which will be at North Academy, Interquest, Briargate, as well as the State Highway 115 NORAD ramps. In addition to that, in Park County, we will see a project released for advertisement later in the summer, early fall at 285 and 9. Those of you that are familiar with that location, reconstruction of that whole intersection, in addition to a bridge there just south of that intersection at 9 and 285 in Fairplay. We also have another bridge replacement project just south of Fairplay on US 285. We expect to see that work to begin, I'd say mid-July. That project has been let and awarded to a contractor, and we're waiting for midsummer to begin that construction on that project in particular. A couple of other projects of note as you head out west on 24 at Wilkerson Pass, you'll see some work on the west side of that pass. We're going to be widening shoulders and replacing guardrail and doing some pavement reconstruction on that pass. And then again, I've mentioned, I think once or twice here on US 24 East between Calhan and Peyton, we have a bridge replacement project. We're expecting that to begin this spring as well. So again, that's in addition to a number of other smaller scale projects throughout the region, but very busy construction season ahead of us. So with that, I'll entertain any questions you may have.
Are there any questions for either Richard or Shane? And I just want to actually express my appreciation about identifying some of those other projects. You know, they might be somewhat smaller, like the bridge on Eastern 24, if I understood correct. But, you know, to the community out there, that means a lot. So to continue to kind of update us on a regular basis on those, even if they might be somewhat smaller, I think that's great to continue to do that.
Will do.
Yes, thank you. And then I know that we've had this conversation. I think there is a meeting set up. I just don't know the date. I think it's a Saturday, and this is to talk to the residents down in 115 south of Cheyenne Mountain State Park. And I appreciate CDOT, your willingness to do that. And I'm hopeful, if you could refresh my memory on what the plan is, because you all had mentioned there'll be some work on that 115 area down there. I can't remember exactly what the work is. And then, of course, when you go and talk to the residents, you're going to be talking to them about the safety concerns they have about getting in and out of that highway, going in a 90-degree turn directly from a local residential road to a very busy highway. And so you'll hear from them conversations about needing a deceleration lane or an acceleration lane or something that improves the safety. So what is that project down there again, if you might reiterate it and confirm the date that we're meeting with them?
Sure. As far as the date we're meeting with them, I'd have to go back. I'm not actually sure we've settled on that date. I know there's been some discussion as time frame for the date, but definitely this spring to have that meeting and that discussion. As far as the scope of the work, it really begins at Gate 6 at Fort Carson. If those of you that are familiar with that area, there's a bridge there called the Rock Creek Bridge, very narrow and constricting bridge. And so essentially that's where the north terminus of this project is located. We're tying into the Gate 6 intersection, if you will, with the 4-lane section. We're extending that passing lane about 1.5 miles to the south to another connection of a passing lane section. We're replacing that bridge at Rock Creek and widening it to accommodate that 4-lane section. And then throughout the rest of the remainder of that corridor to the south, we are reconstructing the pavement. I can't say at this point what that reconstruction will look like. We're currently going through our life cycle cost analysis for that pavement condition. As far as the total length of the project, we're basically going as far as we can go with the budget that we'll have in hand. We're looking around a $39 million budget. And so that's to include the bridge replacement, safety improvements also along that corridor, and a reconstruction of that pavement. And so I'm very well aware of the locations I believe your constituents are speaking to as far as ACL-decel lanes. We are incorporating ACL-decel lanes in the project as well. And so a couple of different sites that we've identified, but we're definitely eager to hear what the community has to say as well, and seeing how that matches up with our safety analysis.
Great, thank you. I know that there's an email conversation about trying to set that date.
Correct.
And I wouldn't, and I know you're committed to doing it, so I would just encourage us all to try to get to that meeting as quickly as possible, because if they can identify maybe something, a requirement of theirs that you might be able to maybe incorporate in the project. Obviously, knowing that sooner rather than later would be better for you all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so let's just do our best to try to get that meeting as quickly as possible. And if I heard you right, you're have the intention of this project to add at least one deceleration lane or acceleration lane somewhere along that corridor. That I'm sure the residents would love to hear that. I don't know if they are going to be asking for two or if one is enough, but
yeah, we've got a couple of locations identified. Like I said, I'm pretty well aware of the community in that area as far as what their concerns on at least a particular development, and I know that location is being included as well. So,
okay, great, thank you very much. Any other questions for CDOT? All right, thank you for the update. Great update. Let's go now to the STAC committee update.
All right, here I am. So as Rich said, we're going to have a STAC on Friday. So it's still a little bit odd because I'm giving you old news. But STAC on Friday, we will discuss the third phase of Senate Bill 267 funds, and we're excited about that. CDOT is looking at hiring more people to help streamline the contracting of the stimulus funds. And also too, I understand that we might actually get transportation legislation out of Congress this summer. So that will help to have more people at CDOT so that we can get that money into jobs and roads quickly. We talked about the 10-year pipeline and that we're getting a lot of projects started on that, getting them completed and turning that plan into a reality. There's a lot of information available online on CDOT to look at with dashboards and story maps. And then we discussed the importance of, with the SB 267 update, that there would be now equity coming back through regions 1, 2, 3, and 5, because we helped, I think, the rural regions the year before. So those are kind of the things that we did. We're looking forward to this Friday. Obviously, two other things I should bring up. Congress just passed a very large stimulus funding bill, and I would encourage counties and towns and cities to be aware that that money could be used for broadband. And we just adopted a policy that sometimes the best trip is the trip not taken. So keep an eye on that as to how you might be able to use that if you have the money to use that for broadband needs in your community. I think we found out this year that broadband is needed way more than anything else. As the chairman of the CCI, the Colorado County's Transportation Committee, we've heard some discussions about what the state transportation bill is going to look like. It's going to be big. It's going to have a lot of moving parts. And I think that when that drops, I would encourage the membership as much as possible to attend our legislative committee meeting, or even if we have to have a supplemental meeting, to spend some time digging into that bill so everybody understands how the moving parts work. I just gather it's going to be huge transportation legislation. So we'll want to know how that affects our communities. And that is my update.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Commissioner Williams? All right, great update. Let's move on to the next item, which is the Executive Director's Report. Andy, I think you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be brief, just a couple of items. Just to let you know, we're advertising for Brian Potts's old position, the JLU's program manager. We've restructured it just a little bit and now calling it the military planning manager. So just a slight tweak in the position description. It's open through the month of March. So if you know of any good candidates, please send them our way. Secondly, just want to mention that we were asked by the city of Colorado Springs to draft a letter of support for an infra grant that they're going to submit for the project on South Academy from Fountain Boulevard to Milton Proby Parkway. It's a project within our long range plan and the TIP, obviously a corridor of regional significance. So we're happy to provide that kind of support. Gives us the potential to leverage local and regional dollars that are on the project to bring in potentially federal monies on an important corridor like this. So just wanted to let the board know that we'll be drafting up and submitting a letter of support for that. And I think Gail Sturdivant might be on the line if you have any questions, detailed questions about the project and what that entails. And finally, I'll just mention, I know we're all dealing with Zoom fatigue and everything that comes with that. We're working our hardest to try to figure out how we can start shifting into doing hybrid meetings, hopefully sooner rather than later, where we can have at least partial in-person attendance in our conference room and everybody else Zooming in. I don't know what our overall capacity would be yet within our conference room, but stay tuned on that. And Mr. Chair, if you and the Vice Chair, Sharon, have a few minutes to maybe chat after this meeting, Jessica and I can stay on the line and just kind of talk about what that looks like. So I know there was some interest in that earlier this week, but we're working it as hard as we can. We just got to get the right technology in place. So that's all I've got for now.
Great, thank you. Let's move on then to, well, actually, before I go any further, any questions for Andy? Okay, now hearing none on that, let's move to member entity announcements. Any members, any board members that have any comments or updates they'd like to make about their own jurisdictions? Okay, hearing none, I don't think we have anything there. We're going to keep pressing forward in the county, our own local public health office, to do everything we can to get all the vaccines out as quickly as we can. There's been some controversy that we've seen from time to time, but I can tell you that for the vaccines that the county has received, we have an excellent distribution and delivery of those vaccines. We're one of the highest in the state. If there's any questions about whether we've received all the vaccine that we should receive, that's another question. But once we get it out into arms, and we do it pretty fast. So we're doing a pretty good job there. I'll just leave any updates from myself with that. And I think, unless there's any last seconds.
I had just one more update. So yesterday at the Board of County Commissioners, they presented a draft master plan for land use. That is at www.elpasoco.com. But one of the really awesome comments we got out of that plan was thanks to this organization for their joint land use planning around military bases, because that was a very much a companion document and it's built into our plan. If you have any questions about the plan or want to review it, please visit our website. We've got a month to review it and we'd like to see 3,500 comments. So.
Yeah, and actually I appreciate Holly that you brought that up, because it was just issued for public comment, the last major round. We are looking for a lot of comments. And I would encourage everybody to go look at it, because we got a very close review of it in our board meeting yesterday. And that document is really well done, in my opinion. I'd love to hear if other people feel the same, or if we're missing anything major in there. But I would encourage you all to go take a look. Maybe Andy, if you people from the PPACG staff might want to go take a gander at that, and maybe PPACG might have some comments for us as well.
Yes, we'll do. Good suggestion. Yep.
Okay, outstanding. Any other last call for any other comments? All right, hearing none, this March 10 PPACG meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much. And Andy, as you asked, I'll stay online.
Okay, super. Thank you. And Sharon, if you can stick around for a few minutes, that'd be great.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, sure.
Got a few folks that haven't dropped. There we go. We're getting there.
No worries. Nothing too